Mira lies on her couch in a small city apartment where the old clock ticks like a patient animal, and the refrigerator hums as if rehearsing a lullaby. And she is trying to write an idea for a horror intro, but her page only says Whispers Intro Idea, and the rest is a blank field that seems to breathe. A storm drifts over the roofs without committing to thunder. The curtains stir in a draft that should not exist, and her phone is face down with barely any battery left. She thinks she will close her eyes for 1 minute, but the minute stretches until a faint pressure brushes her ear the way a moth would if air had hands, and she hears her name spoken as lightly as a leaf touching water, and her eyes open to a room that looks ordinary, while the hallway to her bedroom looks less like a place and more like a posture. She says hello and hears only the building's long exhale. She says Emma, as if naming a friend could persuade the air to provide a human answer. Nothing. She stands, and the floor gives a small private click, and she walks toward the kitchen sink and runs water for the comfort of a normal sound. Then she catches the mirror on the cabinet door, showing a woman with flat hair and a weight in her eyes, and she closes it with a small laugh that has no audience. The lamp in the living room keeps its warm cone of light, but refuses to cross into the hallway, and Mira lifts the remote, tries a late-night channel, sees smiling hosts selling impossible knives, mutes the television because the cheer feels hostile, and the quiet grows larger as if it can stretch when unobserved. Then the whisper arrives again and uses her name with the softness of a secret, and Mira turns to the hall and asks who is there, with a voice that insists it is unafraid and fails to convince anyone, least of all herself. She flips the hallway switch, and the bulb denies her in a clean way that feels worse than drama. She moves forward with one hand along the wall, feeling every old paint drip like a tiny ridge map, and steps into the bathroom midway and floods it with hard white light that makes the tiles look guilty. She stares at the mirror and watches steam arrive too fast, as if something else is breathing for her, and the whisper slides in with the steam and says, "It was here before she signed the lease, before the paint dried, before anyone decided the apartment would belong to a person rather than the evenings." Mira asks it to leave, and hears the answer that it is lonely, not theatrical, only honest, and she discovers that honesty is more dangerous than threat, because it unlocks the part of her that wants to answer everything. "Everyone is lonely," she says, and the voice replies, "Not like this, not in the way of counting shoulders in the dark and memorizing the slope of each and still never having a name spoken to you at bedtime." She forces herself back into the hallway and sees the runner with its familiar ridge. But tonight the ridge feels planned, like a knuckle beneath cloth. She kneels and lifts the edge and hears the sigh of brittle tape and finds pencil marks on the wooden floorboards, faint as the last use of a dull pencil, each mark numbered with tiny care that is not her handwriting. 11, 12, 11. Her stomach falls as if the hallway has a drop in it, and she understands that someone measured this corridor night after night, and the counts never settled. She asks who did it, and the whisper answers that a man lived here who believed he could stop the change if he named it, who taped the runner to anchor the world, who drew and then stepped into the exact middle and kept walking until the distance grew longer than his life. Mira smooths the runner as if a surface without wrinkles makes reality unchangeable, and she says no because people say no to tidy ghosts in tidy apartments, and she flees to the landline because her phone is on its last breath, and she dials Emma and hears a voice softened by sleep and friendship, and she asks a sideways question about apartments looking at you, and Emma advises water and tea and not staring at any dark part for too long, and asks if she should stay on the line, and Mira says she will be fine and will call in the morning, and the word promise leaves her mouth like a small lifeboat. She makes tea because action feels like a fence against fear, and when the kettle stills, she pours 2 cups, and after a moment of embarrassment, places one in the doorway of the bathroom, offering it to the draft that learned her name, and the whisper thanks her without triumph, only with a soft relief that makes her chest ache. She curls on the couch with her own cup and watches the apartment hold steady, and then she notices in the reflection of the black TV that the hallway seems a finger longer, and she refuses to turn because attention is permission, and says aloud that she is not playing. The whisper replies that games are how rules go missing, and she asks for the rules, and the voice lists them not as threats but as a ledger, and every line is a strange truth. Step forward, and the hall grows. Step back, and you stay. Use a mirror, and you borrow a breath. Close a door, and you keep a secret. Open it, and the secret keeps you. She rubs her forehead as if heat will erase the list and says, "You are very poetic." And the voice says it prefers carpentry because carpentry keeps doors square, and Mira almost smiles, and then the dark at the bedroom door gathers itself like velvet turning deeper, and she sees the runner's pattern, a line into a shy compass that points 3 steps from where she stands. If you step to the center, says the whisper, in the tone of someone handing you a choice rather than a dare, the hall will open for a while, not forever, because forever is not a real number, but long enough for morning to forget you. And if you step back, you will hear your kettle tomorrow, and you will remember to call your friend. Mira looks at the spot, and the air there seems thicker the way summer roads waver, only colder, and she takes 1 step toward it, and the apartment seems to dim as if a curtain passed across a thought, and she takes a 2nd step, and the frames on the wall tilt their interest an almost invisible amount, and she lifts her foot for the 3rd and stops and asks what she would see if she went forward, and the voice tells her gently that she would see the hallway she has been mapping without writing it down, the messages she thinks she will answer tomorrow, stacking like the pencil marks under the runner, the promises she keeps in notebooks and forgets on tables, the mornings when the mirror fogs, and she waits because she does not want to meet her own eyes while they ask a question, and at the end a door that opens by exactly the amount she wants, and no more, which is the kindest trap in the world. "That sounds gentle," she says, and the whisper agrees, which is why people stay too long. She lowers her foot backward, and the room brightens by a breath, and she says that she would like to remain in the place where the kettle sings, and Emma answers, and the voice releases a relief that belongs to no lungs and says good, and Mira asks if that was what it wanted, and it says it wanted her to want it herself. She laughs in a way that shakes, says, "You are therapy?" And the voice says it is carpentry again, and somewhere a neighbor's door finishes closing and proves that life continues next door, whether or not anyone steps into the center of their hallway. Mira breathes, and the apartment breathes with her, and the dark does not chase, and she walks to the couch, and the tea tastes like a decision accepted, and she sets the cup down and picks up the dead phone and chooses the landline again and calls Emma back, not to ask for rescue, but to keep the line that the word promise threw across the night. And Emma answers with the simple, "I am here" that people give each other when the world is big enough to swallow small fears, but also big enough to hold them. And Mira tells the story of the marks and the runner and the voice that keeps count. And Emma listens and says that if she were there she would make 2 cups and leave one in the hallway just to be polite. And Mira says she already did. And Emma says good job like a smile with sound. When they hang up, the silence does not widen to swallow her and does not narrow to choke her. It sits beside her with the manners of a guest who knows when to speak and when to keep her company by breathing. Mira dozes and wakes to the clock, marking time, as if time were a small round animal turning in place, and the building sighs and settles, and her eyes blur and clear, and the apartment refuses to perform any tricks. At some hour that might be 2 or might be 4, she carries her cup to the sink and finds the other one in the doorway, skinning over with a thin membrane that tea makes when it is allowed to tell time, and that fact is so ordinary that it cures something raw in her throat. She lifts the runner edge again to see if the tape has reattached itself to hope, and the tape lies tired and loose, and she leaves it where it is because some thresholds need a little give. She touches the pencil marks with one fingertip and decides not to erase them and not to add more, because knowing that someone counted and that counting did not save him is a kind of instruction that words cannot give. She smooths the fabric and stands and looks down the length of wood and wool and doors and air that make the hallway, and she says, "I hear you," and the whisper replies, "I hear you," and nothing dramatic happens, and that feels like mercy. Morning shows up in the window glass with a flat gray light that makes the outlines of things honest, and the hallway looks as straightforward as a ruler, and the lamp looks like a lamp, and the plant tries to decide whether to die or live, and chooses, for now, to remain undecided. Mira plugs her phone in, watches a little red sliver become a green promise, and texts Emma the most basic sentence that can carry a whole night inside it, which is, "I am here," and Emma replies with the other half of the spell, which is, "I am here too." Mira makes fresh tea because some rituals pay rent, and she steps into the hall, deliberately skirting the center by a harmless inch, and opens the bedroom door exactly as much as morning requires, and in the quiet that follows she understands that the whisper was not a monster and not a friend, but a register of choices, a keeper of doors that become habits, and that the truest resistance to vanishing is not bravery, but ordinary devotion. She returns to the couch and her notebook, writes a single sentence that makes her smile because it sounds both like a warning and like a blessing. And the sentence is this: "The hallway counts, so count back."